Some time ago, Turkey, which was making money silently, suddenly announced to raise interest rates by 500 basis points. It happens to reach 50%, but compared to the world, many countries are discussing interest rate cuts. In the past 2 or 3 years, the world situation has been unstable, but Turkey has been able to make money everywhere. How did he do it? He gained a lot of benefits from the Russia-Ukraine war. For example, the Agency of Oil and Grain in Russia. In addition, he also made a fortune by joining NATO from Finland and Sweden. Then, during the war between Israel and Hamas, they also strongly condemned and organized various kinds of orders obtained through rescue. At the same time, after the previous cooperation projects with Israel were stopped, people did not pay back the money they had invested in Israel. That is, you can see a lot of news in Turkey. Except for the natural disasters, the rest is all news about how he managed to get money. Is it very different from everyone's impression that suddenly the situation is good, and interest rates are raised by 500 basis points? This is what we are going to talk about today, and it is worth pondering. Let's talk about why Turkey has become like this. We all know that Turkey developed well more than 10 years ago. It has become the 15th largest automobile manufacturer in the world. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, GM, Suzuki and Toyota have all set up factories here. Turkey is a country that supplies manufacturing industry to Europe. At that time, Turkey faced Europe and thought that I could compete with Egypt now. With my personnel costs, I could export a large number of products in Europe at a relatively low cost. First, Turkey has a good relationship with Turkey. Under such circumstances, how did Turkey get to the present? It has to be said here that Italy is also greedy and has set up a trap for Turkey, which is a country heavily dependent on imported raw materials. Don't be fooled by the fact that it only discovered rare earths in this area, but without technology, resources are relatively scarce. It relies heavily on imports for its production materials. Japan is like this, and Turkey is like this. Its important thing is its geographical location. One reason why resources are scarce is that you need to buy raw materials in euros and dollars. So Turkey borrowed a lot of euro bonds and dollar bonds at that time. Many countries and large companies around the world also purchase US dollar bonds. His purpose in issuing this type of debt is that, when I repay the US dollar, I will definitely have better returns. When my currency appreciated or my profits were high enough, it was cost-effective for me to borrow foreign exchange bonds. The situation was good, so when I could borrow US dollars and euro bonds, an epidemic broke out in the world a few years ago. Turkey is a country heavily dependent on tourism resources. Europe has done research. In addition to Spain, the second place is the first place in Turkey. Sightseeing here is cheap, and then there is a lot of fun. In this case, the tourism revenue decreases immediately. At the same time, when lending you US dollar debt, a large number of orders disappeared, resulting in a large number of orders being reduced. All of a sudden, the Federal Reserve released water. At that time, Erdogan announced Erdogan's economic monetary easing. After the monetary easing, Turkey's domestic currency was more than the US dollar. Suddenly, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates. Because the war between Russia and Ukraine was the reason for the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates at that time. That is to say, the Western support here is strongly linked to the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve. The current situation and support for the Federal Reserve's shift in monetary policy have changed. So far, it seems that Turkey continued its monetary easing at that time, but the difference was increased. The dollar debt could not be paid off, and the income declined. Here, it was loose again. The dollar debt could not be paid off, and the exchange rate collapsed. The second reason lies in the fact that Turkey is also a big chemical country, because the plastics made with Russian oil may be sanctioned. In this case, not only that, but also Turkey's exchange rate will fall again and again after the decline of tourism, mentioned just now. After Erdogan reacted, he ended his monetary easing and began raising interest rates at night. So after a series of twists and turns, we see that Turkey is taking advantage everywhere. But it is actually just sewing and patching, and it is basically to prevent emergencies. And the most important thing is that Turkey has been at war, which is a huge investment. You should know that the cost of war is very high. It never stops, with expenses, natural disasters, earthquakes, and facing turbulence. The advantage it takes is that it loses the tip of the iceberg.